All camera lenses are pretty much the same, right? Wrong. In this video, we're going to be talking about a camera lens that throws out the rule book and almost gets away with it. Intrigued? Keep watching, but first, here's a history lesson. Mirror lenses, or catadioptric lenses, to give them their official title, can trace their design back over 200 years to early telescope development. Fast forward to the 1970s and 80s, and these lenses were redesigned to fit the growing 35mm SLR market. Their simple construction meant they could be produced at an affordable price and have proved extremely popular. So how do mirror lenses work then? Well, it's quite simple really. Here's our mirror lens. What happens is we've got the front element there. Light passes through like it does in a conventional lens. It comes to the back of the mirror lens, and there we have the concave mirror. It fires it then at an angle back to the front element where you've got this central mounted mirror, and then light passes back through the rear element and onto your image sensor in your camera. Quite simple really. So with all that science and astronomy background, these mirror lenses sound too good to be true, yes? Well, you'd be right. And the first thing I should mention is that no professional photographer I know uses a mirror lens in their commercial work. We'll get to why that is during the video, but if you're a hobby photographer on a tight budget, should you consider buying a mirror lens? On paper, it's a short, lightweight, if slightly bulky, 500mm telephoto lens, and which would cost you new for around about £120. That does sound like a bargain, but there are a few caveats. The first thing to consider is that this camera lens is completely manual. There is no autofocus or image stabilization in this lens at all. So if you like to just mount a lens to your camera, stick it in auto, go and take some very nice pictures, then this is not the lens for you. Another point to consider is that this lens is a T-mount, and you will need an adapter like this to screw onto the back of the lens. Now, usually when you buy a lens from the likes of Amazon or one of the photographic stores, it probably will come with a suitable T-mount for your camera. If you're buying second hand and you don't have the T-mount in the listing or wherever you've picked it up from, don't worry, these are really cheap and you can buy them online from the likes of eBay for about £4 or £5. Also often included with the lens, if you buy it new, is something like this, which is a 2x teleconverter. So that makes your 500mm lens into a 1000mm lens. But beware, all I found out with this was it actually magnified not just the image but also the issues you have with the lens. The next thing to consider is the fact that this is a fixed aperture lens. You can choose from 6.3, 6.3, or yes, you guessed it, 6.3. It's fixed aperture, nothing you can do about that. The only way around it would be to raise either your ISO or alter your shutter speed to compensate. The third point to consider with this lens is the bokeh. Now, while some lenses produce circular or sometimes even oval bokeh, the mirror lens produces donuts. And unlike Homer Simpson, not everyone is keen on donuts. The donut bokeh is caused by this central mounted mirror, and whilst if you have a chip or a scratch on the front element of your conventional lens, and you'll find that it's very unlikely that you can actually see that in the final image, that's because light will bend around those imperfections. There are limitations about what light can do, and this is it. Some people do like the donut shaped bokeh, and it certainly has its own place in photography, Sometimes it's quite severe and quite distracting, other times it kind of adds to the image. Next issue that you might find with the mirror lens is sometimes the images lack contrast. They may appear a little bit washed out, and that was obviously a disaster back in the day when you were shooting colour film, but with modern digital cameras you can always address that in post and it's not such an issue. One issue you might encounter with the mirror lens is just the basic usability of it. Because of that fixed aperture, bright light is a necessity, and that will mean that you will, as I've said earlier, have to play about with either raising your ISO or raising or lowering the shutter speed. Another issue to consider, despite the fact that this lens barrel is quite large and the focal ring isn't too bad, it is really difficult to get a sharp shot, and that's because the depth of field on these mirror lenses is razor thin. That said, if you were only ever going to be using your images on social media or producing only small prints, then I would not let that put you off buying this lens, because you'd be able to sharpen up those images when you reduce the size of them. So I think that's pretty much the negative issues with this lens out of the way. So, are there any positives? Well, one positive is that this lens is designed as a full frame lens, so if you are, for example, an owner of an APS-C camera like my Nikon D3300, then due to the crop factor, this 500mm lens is now an 800mm lens. If, however, you are shooting a micro 4/3, then this 500mm lens now becomes a 1000mm lens. The trump card for this lens, as far as I'm concerned, is for taking photographs of the moon. Why? Because your focus is going to be set to infinity, and therefore the bokeh is not going to be an issue. In addition, if you like to shoot photographs of non-moving wildlife, so birds sat in trees and things like that, then you'll find this is quite a good lens to get you much closer to the subject than you would be able to do with a kit lens. Yes, it's true, National Geographic is not going to be knocking at your door for your photographs, but if you're just taking photographs for your own enjoyment, then the images are okay. That said, it is quite a fun lens to use. The range is pretty amazing, and you can grab details that no kit lens could ever reach. So, to sum it up, first we'll go through the pros and cons. So first we'll go through the pros. What are they? Well, it's a 500mm lens or more, depending on what camera you're fitting it to, costing you about £120 new, or even less if you buy one second hand. Secondly, it's quite fun to use, different, and sometimes challenging, but still quite a fun lens to use. You'll enjoy using it, even if it tests you at times. The third thing is it's a compact size for a 500mm lens, so should fit into your camera bag, no bother at all. And then, oh yes, that Doughnut bokeh. if you like that sort of thing. So the negative points, what are the cons? Well, that fixed aperture makes it more difficult to use than it would have if it had an aperture ring. Images can sometimes be soft, but as we say, if you are reducing the size of the images, you can sharpen them up then anyway. It's manual everything. That's another thing. There's no assistance whatsoever. Another point is the shallow depth of field. Now that's going to be a challenge to use, but sometimes it can give you a different field to your photography. And lastly, the donut bokeh, if you don't like that sort of thing. So ultimately, would I recommend a mirror lens? Well, if you like your photography to be easy, then perhaps this is not the lens for you. But if you're on a tight budget and there's no other way of you getting a 500mm lens, then perhaps you should consider one. The images within this video should show you the type of results you're going to get, and also I've listed all of the pros and cons of the lens so you can make up your own mind. Ultimately though, it's whether you're prepared to put up with the entire manual setup of the lens and of course that donut bokeh. So I hope you found this video informative and has helped you make a decision one way or another. If you have enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to the channel and please do give this video a thumbs up. It really does help a lot. Thanks for watching and we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.